I think some of the people watching are probably from Kalechi's audience, and maybe some of them are from mine. But he
Hmm.
was probably the one who got me thinking about Intel initially. I was all about AMD, and I did well on AMD, and I was like, AMD's awesome, Intel sucks. And he's like, dude, but Intel's cool, man. And I'd make like 10 videos of AMD, and he'd be in the comment section of each one and be like, dude, there's hope for AMD. And I'm like, shut up, dude. And then I start looking into it, and I'm like, actually, AMD is pretty dope. Actually, it has some potential, you know? And then,
Yeah.
lo and behold, my portfolio for the last 2 weeks, like the only green stock is Intel.
It's like, oh man, I remember. I mean, even my investment style, I say usually I'll just buy. I like to say I just buy good businesses at good prices is what I like to say. But even with that, I still venture out and I bought. I mean, last year it's crazy. Like I have a separate portfolio where it's like for crazy picks and stuff like that. So I had like lemonade in there, and that is down like almost 80% or something like that. It's just getting crushed.
Yeah, dude.
And but at the same time, I love looking for good businesses in different stages of life. And Intel, how I even started on Intel was so weird. Like I watched a YouTube video that was talking about why Intel was sucking. As like it wasn't even like an investing video. I don't. This is one thing for me. Like most of my investing ideas doesn't come from like investing sources. My good investing ideas so far, I've usually come from like when I'm just like living life. So like
Okay.
Microsoft, when I bought Microsoft a while back, it was I literally had just watched a video about Satya Nadella was changing the way Microsoft operates, and he's doing a better job than Steve Ballmer. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like in 2018. I was like, okay, cool. Like I like Microsoft, and I bought into Microsoft, and that is amazingly well for me. And then Intel, the same thing happened. I was just watching a background of like how Intel had lost the race against AMD and caused Apple to actually start making their own chips and like all of this stuff. And then around that time, shortly after that, I was like, oh yeah, that sucks. And then it talked about the CEO being a finance guy and not an engineer, and he focusing more and more on like the financial side of things. And I was like, yeah, he sucks. He's terrible. What is he doing? He's not supposed to be there. And then I was like, yeah, I would never buy Intel stock. And then shortly after that, the CEO got fired. And then they brought in a guy. They brought in a guy, Pete Gelsinger, my
Gelsinger,
bad,
yeah.
that is now the CEO. They brought him back, and I was like, what is he gonna say?
Yeah,
And then
man.
he like had his first speech, and the first thing he mentioned was like, we're not going to be pushing those buybacks. And I was like, now I'm excited about this. And I was
Yeah,
like, all
man.
right, let's see what he's going to say. Then he started talking about like, we need to put more money into fabricating, and we need to put more money into innovation, and we need to just do a whole lot more. And then that just got me excited. And I was like, I'm buying in. But
Yeah,
the
dude.
problem was I probably should have gotten out because the thing went from like 49 to 60 something. And it was, yeah. So it's like it went all the way to like almost $70 a share.
Wow.
And I'm long term. And I just kept on writing it. Now it's back to like 53. So I should
Yeah,
have
dude.
probably just like taken my gains and ran, and then maybe bought back in. But it is what it is. But yeah, that's how I got into Intel. I like to just find like these companies that a lot of people are starting to hate on.
Yeah,
And I'm
dude.
just like, all right, are you actually that bad? Because the other thing is you look at Intel's financials, and it's like, although they're losing market share to like AMD, they were still growing in market share in other areas as well. So it was just kind of like,
Yeah.
and then you look at, Intel has the cash flow to just burn to be able to like innovate as fast as possible. And we're starting to see that with like a lot of the new chips that they're releasing.
Totally,
And it's
dude.
like, they still got it. Like it's not like they just stop. They don't have good engineers, and now they're poaching engineers, which is like, okay, so Intel still got a little bit of juice with them.
Totally, dude.
So
Yeah. And
yeah,
I one of the things that attracted me to Intel was how many people hate it and how it was like falling into the shadow of Nvidia and AMD and stuff. And it's crazy because I put out actually a lot of my videos recently are Intel, and like nobody cares. Like I get like no views on them, and people are like, Intel's boring, it's stupid, I don't care. And it's like, dude, listen, there's some good stuff going on, man. And it's like, while AMD in the last 2 weeks, while AMD's lost, what is it? Let me pull it up here. It was like
20%
something.
or something like that.
It's pretty gross. I think we hit like
Yeah.
I think we hit 150, dude. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
AMD is just, it's
160. Yeah,
been,
yeah, and it's
yeah,
like while all of that's
all the
been
way to
going on, all the way back down to 120. You know, I was selling. One of my things that I always talk about is dollar cost averaging into a stock, and then
mm-hmm,
dollar cost averaging out of a stock when I see that it's peaked. You know, or
mm-hmm,
or it's at least gained a lot. You know, I've been averaging out of AMD and into Intel, and that doesn't mean AMD sucks and Intel's better now. You know, but I think so many new
yeah,
investors are like, dude, but Intel isn't the best. It's not Nvidia. It's not AMD, and it's like that's not what we're talking about here. They're all dope companies and they're all really good, but
yep,
everybody hates Intel and that's why it's so undervalued. And everybody loves AMD and Intel and that's why they're probably kind of or sorry, not Intel, Nvidia, and that's why they're, you know, expensive. So
yep.
I've been yeah, and I guess that
It's hard.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I think one of the things that a lot of people have to learn, and hopefully through this period of like, I hope this is an extended like period, extended sell off that we have or we've been seeing in the market. I hope that just continues, because a lot of people, we have to learn the difference between like, oh, this company is good, but is it also a good investment right now?
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
the company can be good, but is this investment a good one? Like, learning to switch your mindset from like, oh, they make this amazing thing, to like, okay, they make that amazing thing, but like, is this actually a good buy for us right now? Should I
Yeah.
be putting more and more money into this thing
Totally.
when I'm picking stock? So that's like one thing that I've had to learn, because I mean, I was, what is it? Like a lot of, I mean, if you look at Lemonade or anything like that, I knew Lemonade was way overpriced, but I was just like, who cares? Now it's like, oh, this is why like they talk so much about like pay attention to the downside risk, which is something
Yeah.
that we get excited about something. And the other thing that's like interesting is like, I also pay very much attention to like outside of the investment space, because sometimes in the investment space it becomes an echo chamber where like everybody, you know, like we just said, everybody loves AMD, most people hate Intel, everybody is on Nvidia's bandwagon.
Yeah.
But it's like outside of the echo chamber of investing, if you pay attention to like PC guys and them talking about like, oh wow, look at how good Intel chips are doing, or you listen to like them talk about just Nvidia is now like their newest chip was not that big of a leap in value for the bang for buck.
Yeah.
And I pay attention to that a lot more than
Totally.
I do like somebody who talks about like, oh, this is the PE ratio of this stock. Like I'm
Totally.
just like, like I don't care that much about that. And it's like, what is the actual technology saying? Like,
Yeah.
is the technology going to be something that people want to use or not? And that's what really drives me. And so when I hear like, this is one thing I regret, like AMD from 2019, my little brother was like, he was building a PC. And I was like, oh, what chips are you gonna put in your PC, all this stuff? And he was like, oh, an AMD chip. I was like, AMD? And I didn't think about it at that point in time. But at that point, that was before like the 2020 run that AMD had.
Yeah.
But then I was watching a guy, Dave 2D on YouTube.
Yeah.
He makes amazing, you know him, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes amazing like tech content. And so I was watching him, and every video he was like, for the best bang for buck right now, it's AMD. Best bang for buck right now, it's AMD.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was like, oh yeah, that's cute. That's real cute. And it was like, there was a wave that was happening that I was completely missing. And now, you know, you get to a lot of people who are holding AMD from like 2019 through now. They're like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna take my gains. And even if they don't choose to take their gains, the stock I don't think is gonna fall 100% back to zero.
Yeah.
So you know,
dude.
It's just paying attention to like what are the people saying around us?
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yeah, dude. And it's fascinating. Like I grew up building computers. My brother was like a super tech nerd, and he taught me how to. I built my first computer with my brother when I was like 7 or something like that, and so I've always kind of had that like. Just paying attention to the market in the background kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And for years, AMD was like kind of the cheap, like, you know, it's cheap, but maybe that's all you can afford, so you just get it. everybody really wants Intel kind of thing, you know,
Yep.
and then it started to switch because AMD really started stepping it up. While
Yep.
Intel, you were mentioning all these CEOs, Intel was going through this mode where they're like, basically bean counters were running the company, and they're like, we're spending too much money on engineers, so we have to cut the engineers. And it's like, those are the people that are responsible for the future of your company, dude. Like, yeah. And now Gelsinger, who used to be an engineer, is now running things, and he's like a really genuine guy who kind of understands all of those things. And so I think
Yep.
he's, yeah, so that's why I'm excited about it. But yeah, the new reviews for all these Intel chips are like, these are the best. They're like really good bang for the buck.
Yep.
And Dave 2D put out a video the other day about even like tablets powered by these new Intel chips for mobile that are like, you can play really heavy duty games now. Like you couldn't do that on tablets really until recently, but even Intel's putting those out now. And it's like, this is going to be dope, dude. And then yesterday or today, they just announced a new $20 billion factory they're building in Ohio. And
I just read that.
It's like, dude, Intel is making moves, man.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the cool thing. And but the one thing I'll still say, like Intel, even with their chips, like the advancements they're making, they got to figure out the heat system because I'm looking at like Intel's chips are awesome performance wise, but then it's like you compare it battery wise to like Apple. And I'll say like of anything that's happened, the greatest thing that happened was like Apple was like, all right, Intel, we're done with y'all. We're just going to make our own chips. Totally. And like that really like just made Intel like, oh man, we need to do something. But Intel is like their chips are super powerful, but they gotta get the performance thing down. Like they produce so much heat. Yeah. That's the one thing. Like you watch anybody talk about it, it's like these chips are amazing, but you better have a good cooling system to go along with it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited. It's still like it's a long road to go. And I think Intel is going to be pressured during this time. But the cool thing is it also pays a dividend, which makes it easier for a lot of investors to hold. Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm excited to see how bad things get in the markets because the fact that the NASDAQ is already in a correction and we're just in the third week of the year, this year is going to be painful for a lot of us. It's going to be something silly happening this year.
Totally. Yeah, dude. You mentioned a minute ago, like watching Intel go up all the way up to like high 60s and then just watching it go back down to the 50s and being like, dang it, I should have sold. Like one of the things that's really interesting, an interesting dynamic I see on the internet, and I feel like it was birthed out of the whole GameStop and AMC kind of like diamond hands until we die. We're gonna beat these hedgies. We're gonna make them lose all their money. And basically selling was started, like people started to look at selling as like, you're a weak failure. You're not a good investor. You're a pansy. Mm-hmm. And I've done videos like Palantir, Nokia, Dropbox. And I'm like, I feel like it's probably going to go down now. So I'm going to sell out a big chunk of my shares. And I would get comments. People are like, dude, you're a paper hands loser. Why are you selling? And I'm like, I don't hate these companies now, but I don't think they're going to keep going up. And there's not a lot of reason for them to keep going up. And a lot of people are just like, you're a noob, dude. And I'm like, that's not the right way to do investing, dude. It's like, and I'm like, you could call me a noob.
That's so true. Like, I don't think people understand, even for me, there's one thing that I'm trying to learn to understand is like, so most of my investing background is based off of Warren Buffett stuff, right? Yeah. Like a lot of my investing background is based off of that. And Warren Buffett always likes to say like, my favorite holding period is forever. But even Warren Buffett sells. Like he bought Apple in 2000 and whatever it was, like 2017. Yeah. And it grew to a certain point, and he's been selling out of it. Like he sold, if not to say like Apple is a bad company, but he sold portions of it because part of investing, you have to realize those gains at some point. Yeah. You have to at least take something and enjoy it, because otherwise it's just paper money. Like you just like your losses aren't realized until you sell. Your gains aren't realized until you sell either. Yeah. Otherwise it's just paper money. It just sits there. And we have to, that's one thing that, I mean, even for me, it's something that I have to learn, because I'm like big on like, oh, I'm looking for 5-10 years down the road. But it's like, at the same time, if something hits a certain level that you like, we're like, oh, I expect for it to hit this level. And it's like, all right, cool. I'm going to have to take some off the table, and then, let the rest ride.
Yeah.
But it's also a balancing act of like, I don't know. I always play this game in my head. I love Peter Lynch. She says that sometimes we cut our flowers to water our weeds. So that's one thing I'm always like questioning is like, if I am gonna sell, where am I gonna put this money? Am I using this money? Like I just talked about buying a house, right? So it's like, that's the beautiful thing, to sell out of a stock so I can use it to buy a house. But if I'm just selling out and the money is just gonna sit, then that's when I'm just like, okay, I'm not about to sell, because I need this money to go be somewhere else. Otherwise, I'm just losing out to inflation. Totally. So it's also like, it's a two-pronged question of like, is it time to sell? And then it's like, what am I gonna do with this money when I do sell?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the tricky things that I think is mentally hard for me to get over, on my brokerage, it's like, it's always showing you the realized and unrealized gains and losses. And kind of over the last few weeks, I'm like, I've been saying this on my channel for like 2 months now, it's going to trend down. It will trend down. So take profits kind of thing, and get cash, have cash on hand, because things are going to be on sale soon. And I've taken like a lot of profit, but now my unrealized gain loss chart is like, only the red things remain. There's like no more green, so it's like every time I log into my brokerage, it's just like a sea of red, and like I'm getting all these comments on my videos. People are like, what about skills? What about desktop metal? Like, you recommended these stocks and they're down like 90% now. And I'm like, this is where you don't take losses, And that's why I say, hold on. Like, we're getting into this thing for 5 years. And news changes and stuff. I'm not as excited about skills as I was. What's that?
I don't think people hear you when you say that, though.
Yeah.
When you say like, I'm waiting 5 years, or I'm getting in on this for 5 years, I don't think people actually understand what that means. Of like, yeah, I'm riding this high and low. Like, this is, and I don't think people really understand the concept of like long-term investing. Yeah. Like, I think people like 2020 completely warped our entire view of like what investing looks like. So exactly, everybody just thinks like, oh, I buy a stock, it's gonna go up. It's like, no, that's not reality. Like, if you understand, like when the S&P 500 has back-to-back years of like 20+% returns, it's like historically we have 7%. So it's like, we can't expect to just continue having these world-beating returns all the time. Like, at some point, things are going to normalize, and we're just going to have to, like, learn to deal with the current situation that we're in. And I think now people are starting to learn those lessons. And I thought, like, in my noob self, we had that tech sell-off in October of 2020. Like, I think it was like October, November, where things just dropped drastically. Yeah. And I was like, this is a perfect learning opportunity for most people. I thought people would learn from that. Yeah. But no, 2021 starts, we had GameStop. Then it was just like, we were just running with it. And I was just like, oh, yeah, so this is how investing works now for the time being. And, we always have these moments. And it may not explode in spectacular fashion, but it will just take its time. Like, eventually things come back to earth. And it's like one of my favorite quotes from Howard Marks is, trees don't grow to the skies, but not all grass is weeds. So it's like learning to balance both of those things out. I love that quote, because it just keeps me normalized of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, dude.